So it's my honor me to be here and present our paper, post-training backdoor purification for malware classifier. And we are here to learn more about malware, and we all know like why we want to prevent and like detect the malware to prevent it from harming or attacking our device or system. And this paper focus in like how can we purify the backdoor in the DNN-based malware classifier. So why is the important? Because nowadays we use more and more the machine learning or the deep learning in the core technique to detect the malware sample. And sometimes when we want to train the deep learning model, it requires that we have a large database, and it can be a practice that people can collect the data in the wild. And this practice can introduce some kind of risks, including backdoor attack. So before talking about backdoor attack, let's look into a simplified version of the how to train a malware classifier. So at first, we need to collect the training data, do the labeling, and after we have the data, we can use some static or dynamic analysis or use some package to extract the features from the data. And after we have the feature represented for the data, we can use the feature to train the model. So the model could be the traditional machine learning or could be the deep learning. And to the end, we expect that we have the final model M so that this model can classify correctly a sample into like benign or malware. And backdoor is the kind of malfunction embedded into that model M. So the idea is now we have the malware sample, but if the adversary add the trigger that they already inserted into the model, so the model M couldn't classify this sample correctly anymore. So that's the idea of the backdoor, and how to do that is so the adversary can try to contribute and manipulate a portion into the training data. So because they have that data in hand, so they can freely modify the features of the training data. For example, they can optimize an masking function, or it's called like watermark function, and change some specific value of the malware sample X and turn it into the poison malware sample X star. So that's the idea of how to conduct the backdoor attack in malware classifier. There is already some paper they study how different way to generate the watermark function. And the common threat model that the adversary often make is first the adversary even don't need to control over the training process, but indeed they just need to contribute a very small, like 1% to the training data, and their attack can be conducted in the clean label attack fashion, which means the adversary even don't need to flip or change the label of the poison malware into benign, but they just need to modify the features. But this kind of attack is already show that they can achieve almost perfect attack success rate, like 100%, and the attack can bypass the backdoor defense, such as like strip or neural cleans. And why the backdoor attack is very challenging to deal with. So first of all, the defender don't know about like what kind of malware family that the adversary want to protect, or and the defender also don't know about like what kind of trigger or the masking function which is used by the adversary. And another point is the adversary often try to minimize their fingerprint or their modification on the feature space to bypass the filtering mechanism. So that's why in this paper, we introduced a method called PBP. So the case that we study is now, okay, we already have the model that is already backdoor, and whether we can use the small subset of the clean data to purify the backdoor in that model to fix the model into the purified model, so we can make the model now can classify the trigger malware sample into malware again. One of the advantage of this approach is that we don't need to intervene in the training phase, and we don't need to know about like what kind of the attacks are used by the adversary. So let's talk about the inside, how we develop our method. This is the model M, which is already backdoor, and we have the poison malware sample. And actually, to activate the trigger in that function, there is only a small subset of neurons that are really meaningful in the activating backdoor function, while the remaining neurons, we call it the benign neurons, are not really affect much on the activating the backdoor function. So the idea, if we can detect the subset of the backdoor neurons and do some like pruning or reversing, so we can indeed fix the prediction of the model on the trigger sample. So let's look closer into how the backdoor neurons indeed change the model internal behaviors. So this is the plot of the activation of the backdoor neurons for two versions of the model. On the left is the clean version, and on the right is the backdoor version. And we study it under the two groups of the data. So the first group is the malware data, and the second group is called the poison malware, like the same malware sample but adding the trigger into them. And we can see like with the clean version, the model treat these two groups like almost similarly. So that's why the attack success rate is 0. But like in the backdoor version, the adversary manipulated the model in a way that make the model think these two groups actually belong to the different groups. So that's why the adversary can attain like almost 100% of the attack success rate. And based on the insight that we have, we propose a purification scheme with 2 steps. In the first step, the objective is given the backdoor model, we want to detect which subset is considered the potential backdoor neurons, and the remaining gonna be the normal neurons. But as I discussed before, we don't have any information about what kind of backdoor attack that the adversary already used. So what can we use in the information from the backdoor model? So we base on the batch norm statistic of the backdoor model, because when we train a model, the backdoor model is trained, it is already trained on the clean and the backdoor data. So the batch norm statistic gonna like more or less retain some information about the training data. And we have create another randomized model having the same model architecture as the backdoor model. And we conduct a process called the batch norm statistic alignment. And during this process, we want to observe which neurons are the most important in the alignment process to make the batch norm from a randomized model into similar to those from the backdoor models. So that's the idea of the first step. So after we can determine the set of the backdoor neurons, in the second step, we propose the activation shift fine-tuning or the mask gradient. And with the backdoor neurons, the red ones, we will try to reverse their gradient direction in some step to prevent these neurons going toward the backdoor function direction. But with the normal neuron, we just keep normal update to like maintain the utility of the final model up to the purification. So to evaluate the performance, we did the experiment on 2 settings for the backdoor attacks. So the first setting, we call it the universal backdoor. And in this setting, the adversary try to target every malware family, which means like no matter what the malware belong to which family, as long as the trigger is present on the sample, it's gonna be misclassified into benign. But in the second approach, the adversary only target a very specific malware family. So which means like even with the malware family that not similar to the targeted family from the adversary, the backdoor function will not be activated. And to measure it, we use 2 metrics. The first one is the attack success rate, and the second is the clean accuracy. And we want to minimize the attack success rate as low as possible and maintain high clean accuracy. And first, let's look into the result about the model activation after fine-tuning, and we can see with the 4 baseline on the left, and even after the fine-tuning, this method couldn't fix the activation of the model, which means after the fine-tuning, the model still consider the malware group and the poison malware group differently. However, our method is the only method that can realize the activation of the model and force it to consider these two groups are actually the same malware group. And this result is consistent with the quantitative result that we have here. So the key takeaway from the table is that the PBP is the only method that can reduce the attack success rate stably under all the scenarios that we consider. However, other baseline, they are not stable, and in most of the case, the attack success rate is still more than 90%. And moreover, we also studied our method stability under different settings for both the adversary side and both the defender side. So we changed the poisoning data rate corresponding to how much data that the adversary can control, and we also changed the fine-tuning size, how much the clean data that the defender can collect to fine-tune the model. And the conclusion is that in the case that we consider, the PBP is still the most effective and stable method in reducing the attack success rate. That is only the lowest point compared to other lines from other fine-tuning methods. And the conclusion, I already presented about our method PBP, post-training defense against backdoor attack in malware classifier. We achieved outperform numbers and in reducing attack success rate almost from 100% to 0. And we have very practical assumptions no prior knowledge about what kind of backdoor that the adversary use. Yes, and we also tested the stability under various settings. And beyond the scope of malware classifier, we already test our method on other attacks in computer vision domains, and it still works. Yeah. So that's all of my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, any questions? I guess I will start with a clarification question, right? So you said that so your backdoor attack, you will have a poisoning malware sample, but with the same malware label, right? You don't change the label.
No change in the
but do you assume you know the basically white box knowledge about the model?
of the model.
Right.
So actually, you are talking about the adversary, they're attacking,
adversary,
right?
Right. So for you mentioned the Amber, right? For example, Amber. Yeah. So do you know there's an Amber? Do you know all the parameters for
Of the model.
Of the model?
Yes. So to answer these questions, indeed, in the universal backdoor attack that they conducted with the Amber dataset, they actually have the setting that they use a victim model. They use just simple SVM architectures to optimize the trigger function. But then they can transfer this smart, and if the final model using another architecture, the method still works. And they show that the attack have the transferability from the SVM to MLP models. So
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, sorry. So I think you can send me the email. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. So let's thank the speaker again.